Okay, guys, welcome. Still only 15 people online, which is not very good. 15, 16 people. We're supposed to have a whole lot more. I don't know what's happening, why people are not attending these sessions. Maybe I'll just record these and let you guys watch these later, if that's what everyone else is doing. Um, Anywho, today we are looking at the consumer decision making process. So we'll get right onto it, and let me just switch the screen. So today's lecture is on the consumer decision making process, and this is a two-part lecture. Um, this is part one of the lecture. Um, Consumer decision making process is a very, very important part of our consumer behavior course. Um, Basically, there are different levels of consumer decision making. It starts at the bottom from something very simple as routine response behavior, all the way going up to extensive problem solving. And then somewhere in between where you have limited problem solving, where you don't really think a lot about what you are doing. Um, so factors that affect the type of decision making are the importance of the decision, how important the decision is. If something is, the more important it is, um, the more you need to think about it, the longer the process would be for making that decision. The extent of previous experience, if you have done this in the past, how does that impact your decision making? You would be much faster at it, as opposed to if this is something you're doing for the first time. Um, the existence of a well-established decision criteria. If you work in an organization or in your family or your friends or household or whatever, you have done, you've got a decision-making criteria you set. You've got things that you need to look at. Then your decision making will be much faster and easier. The amount of information at hand about each alternative, so the different alternatives you're thinking of purchasing, the customer is thinking of purchasing. If you have more information, then the decision making process becomes faster and easier. The number of alternatives available. So the more alternatives, the more complex usually it is for customers. Uh, the fewer alternatives, it is a lot easier for customers to make a decision on what product or service to purchase. The model of consumption being followed, right? And a whole bunch of other factors that go into this thing. Um, so how does the decision making process work? It starts with, at the top, um, you have a problem recognition, right? You recognize there's a problem. Now, it could be something as routine as, you feel hungry, you want to go eat something. That's a problem, right? It could be problem, it could be need, it could be want, desire, whatever. But there's a problem. You need to go and solve that problem. Then we go through a pre-purchase search. We do an alternative evaluation, find out all the options that are available for us, um, and then we purchase it. We use the product or service, and then there's the post-purchase evaluation. So let's break this down and go into all of these steps in more detail. First step obviously is the, customer just thinks, okay, there's a need that is unfulfilled. They think, you know what, um, I need to get this XYZ product service, or I need to solve this problem, I need to get this solution, I need to do something. So that is where the customer realizes there's a difference between an actual state and a desired state. If you're hungry, the actual state is your tummy is rumbling, is telling you, your brain is telling you you need to go and eat something. If um, you are thirsty, again, same thing. Your mouth is dry, your throat is dry. Um, you need to get a new laptop or PC or something. Why? Because because of coronavirus, whatever, your laptop is stuck somewhere where you cannot go back to work or to that place, or your current laptop is too slow. It's not doing the work that you need it to do. It doesn't have all the options, the features that you wanted. So your actual state is you have something or you don't have something, which is not really getting the job done for you. The desired state is for you to be able to um, have a better product which can help you solve your problems. The higher the gap, the stronger the need for you to fulfill that gap. Um, or we could say that the bigger the problem. So if you're just a little hungry, uh, you might think, okay, you know what, I will skip it. I'll wait for a while. You don't have to go and fulfill that need straight away. But if you're very hungry, right, the bigger the gap, then you are more likely to go and get that problem solved more urgently. Then there are active versus inactive problems. Active problems are those that you are aware of. Inactive ones that you're not yet aware of, but may exist. Okay. Um, a lot of the medical problems could fall under this category where you have a lot of issues. There might be issues you're not really aware that these issues are there. Apple did something brilliant. Apple figured out the inactive problem or need. So when we say problem here, it's not just a problem. It could be a need, it could be a want, it could be a desire. Um, so Apple figured that out with their iPad. So before the iPad came, nobody would ever say that, oh, I need a device which will be so big and I can use using my finger, right? I could tap on it and I could use the device. Um, no one probably ever said that to Apple, but Apple was able to figure out this was something that the customer needed, and then they created this product. So those that require immediate solutions and those that do not require immediate solutions. So your roof is leaking, okay, that requires immediate solution, especially if you live in a place where it rains a lot, or if you are in a place where the rains are about to start, the rainy season or the monsoons or something of that sort. Um, Immediate problem, and you get it fixed. Your car is broken. You need to get to work. Hopefully, after the corona lockdown is over, all of us will be back. Um, but if the car is broken down, you need to get to work. You don't have any other mode of transportation, then that is something that needs to get solved immediately. Um, the problem recognition and marketing strategy. How do these two things fit in with each other? So what we want to do as marketers, identify existing consumer problems and find solutions for those. Okay, so we want to look at our target audience and say, what are the problems that our customers are trying to solve? What are the issues that they're trying to fix? Um, we might want to lower their actual state, right? Again, we do that through advertising and so on and so forth. We want to increase the desired state. So what we try to say is, well, you know what, you're doing this, but wouldn't it be better if you got something which was much, much more powerful, faster, cooler, funkier, whatever. Increase the importance of the gap between the actual and the desired states. So, you know, there are people out there, and marketers do this. There are people out there who buy products um, which they might not necessarily need. Okay, and we've seen this now, I think, more than ever during this coronavirus lockdown. How many things do you have sitting around which you don't really use? You can't use them, right? A friend of mine was saying the other day, I've got 3 cars, but I can't use any one of them, right? What good is having 3 cars? It's making people realize, okay, what is necessary, what is not necessary. So, do you really need those, a pair of trainers or sneakers that cost $400. You know, okay. But marketers, what they do is they create um, marketing companies. They create um, that desire in a customer, or something I've got to have, something I need, something I want. If I have this product, then I'll feel a lot better about myself. I'll feel cooler, or whatever. A lot of us buy the latest mobile phones. Why do we buy these latest mobile phones? The funny thing is, those latest mobile phones, um, most of us, don't even use 20 or 30% of the power of your mobile phone, right? So why every year do people go out and upgrade their phones, get newer, faster phones? Well, guess what? Marketing companies are working, trying to create that um, desired state. I want the cooler, faster, better phone with a bigger screen, more cameras, higher resolution, so on and so forth, right? Well, in actuality, um, you can do something without. I've got uh, again, a colleague of mine, who, um, I think is still got an iPhone 5. This is in 2020. The guy's got an iPhone 5, and he runs an IT company. He's got clients all over the world. And I was like, dude, why do you still have an iPhone 5? Shouldn't you be upgrading? And he's like, well, this iPhone 5 does everything I need to do. Why do I need to upgrade the phone? Right? Um, and I guess iPhone 11 or something is out in the market now. So, um, but for the majority of us, marketing companies, what do? They're trying to create the desired state where you've got to have a bigger, better, faster phone or device, or whatever. Um, we want to convert inactive problems to active problems. So those problems which might be inactive, we want to convert them to to active ones. So people might not be thinking about it, but then you're telling people, well, you know what, this has now become something that you should be trying to solve, and convert problems into ones requiring immediate solution. Right? So what we're trying to do is trying to show the urgency to the customer. Well, you should go and purchase this product, this software, the solution, the service, uh, as soon as possible. Um, the customer goes through something called a pre-purchase search. So what do we do? A customer looks for, they need to look at information sources. Where can we get information about our problem, right? Um, so the problem we have during this coronavirus lockdown is we need to impart education. We need to, um, you know, impart learning, right? Students want to learn, faculty want to teach, trainers want to go out and impart knowledge, and people who want to get trained want to improve their learning. Where How do we do that given the fact that we cannot physically be there? So we look at information. What are the ways, where can we learn? Okay, so it could be people who've done this in the past, other universities, other trainers, other organizations who have been doing online learning, for example, or have been looking at alternative sources of learning. Um, and we start searching what are the possible, um, you know places we can get information about. Maybe you've got a friend or colleague, a relative, neighbor, coworker, whatever, who's been already doing something similar, who's been doing online learning. Okay, it could be impersonal information sources such as newspaper, magazines, blogs, social media, and so on and so forth, right? We try to gather information about all the possible ways of solving this problem. Okay, so the types of information sought, we could be looking at brands or alternatives available, right? So when I was looking at what is the best way to set up an online session for you guys, I looked at all the different softwares that were available, right? So we know that there's Skype that does this. We know Zoom that does this. We know Google Meeting does this. we use YouTube Studio. We know the learning management systems. The online VLEs have got capabilities for doing this. But then we create criteria for ourselves. What are the criteria? How do we evaluate these different um, brands or tools that are available for us? And um, so the criteria will vary from one person to another person. In my case, for example, I've got different types of learning that I need to impart. I teach university MBA classes, like I'm doing right now. Uh, I teach a course for the MPhil and PhD level, which is a very different type of course than an MBA course. And then I do trainings, corporate trainings, and that is a very different type of um, solution that we need to solve, as opposed to an MBA or PhD and then the corporate training. So, what are the differences? If you just look at the difference between these three, you look at your target audience. Who are the people that will be there? How many people will be there? So, I know people in the corporate sector who need to get corporate trainings. A lot of these people have been engaged, involved in online uh, workshops or online webinars or online learning for a long period of time. Many companies have been doing this for a very long period of time. So a lot of these people will be accustomed to many different types of technologies that are out there. I also know that training is much more hands-on as opposed to uh, an MBA class, which is more slightly more discussion based. Now, on the MBA classroom, we need to have discussions. Yes, that is important. We need to discuss case studies. That is important. Um, However, the MBA class is a lot bigger than a corporate training. Corporate trainings usually, would be between 10 to 15, at max 20 people. That's really the maximum you'd want to go for. Depends on the type of training as well, but usually the numbers are much smaller. If you're teaching a PhD class, again, the numbers are even smaller. So the group I've got right now, there are only 4 people on that class. So the interactivity that we need would be very different on all 3 of these types of um, solutions that I'm looking for. Um, then you need to look at the profile of the users, right? Like I said, uh, people who are working in the corporate sector, they have a lot of experience. People who are doing MBA, they might have some experience, um, but it won't be at a higher level. Whereas the corporate sector, usually it's senior guys who've got higher experience. Um, what are people comfortable with? So this is one of the things I thought about. What would be people comfortable with? So you would really want to use the tools and technologies that people already use, right? Um, so for the MBA, I know, because the age group is much lower as compared to um, the corporate trainings. I know the types of social media that people use are very different. Okay, when I ask my corporate training workshops, the participants, how many of them are on Snapchat? It's usually 1 or 2 people out of a group of, say, 15 people who would be on Snapchat. But if I ask you guys the question, I would ask, who is not on Snapchat? Um, and the answer to that will be, there'll be very few people, I think, who would not be on Snapchat. Most people would be on Snapchat. So the type of social media that people are using is very different because the age groups are different. Um, so that is one of the criteria that I looked at when I was evaluating what media to use and how to uh, how to solve this problem. Let's take this from slightly different perspective. um, let's take this from a slightly different perspective and look at the uh, example of eating out, right? So you're hungry, you want to eat out. Well, um, what are the sources of information available? Okay, now because we are in a coronavirus lockdown, um, there's many restaurants. Um, so obviously you cannot go to a restaurant and eat physically, but at the same time, you um, you can order food from different restaurants, right? Um, how many people here have ordered food during the coronavirus lockdown um, for to their homes, right? You can just okay. So I have yet to do this, so I don't have much information for this. So I'll need to go and find out what are the restaurants. Where do I get this information from? Again, it's from friends, family, co-workers, colleagues, students, and so on and so forth. Uh, I would go online and search for these type of things. I'll use an app which um, which would tell me food delivery apps which would tell me what are the restaurants that would deliver in my area, right? um, and then I evaluate the choices. Okay, what type of food do I want to eat? What are the restaurants? How much delivery time do we have? That they're going to take to deliver, and that will depend on how hungry I am. So a lot of factors will go in evaluating this criteria, right? The cost would be part of this thing. So in terms of the number of people who've ordered from restaurants, there are quite a few people I can see who've ordered from restaurants. Whereas I believe there's only one person who is not on Snapchat. So my point um, there exactly being is the age group that we're looking at. So when we're evaluating the brands, the different things, you could look at all the possible brands and you break it down between the known brands and the unknown brands. The restaurants you know about, the restaurants you don't know about. One of the reasons why the learning management systems are not very successful is that is an unknown brand to a lot of students. That is an unknown thing to a lot of students. There are other solutions out there by third parties besides YouTube and Zoom and Skype and stuff, but a lot of those are unknown brands. Now, before the coronavirus lockdown, Zoom was relatively unknown for majority of the people. It was perhaps relatively well known for people working in the corporate sector because that is uh, a tool that a lot of people used prior to the coronavirus lockdown. But in um, for other people who had not used this was relatively unknown. Um, However, that unknown became more popular because you saw it on media, you saw it on television, you saw other people using Zoom to communicate with each other. So you're like, oh, okay, that's something different, something that I might be able to consider. So within the unknown brands, you're looking at further criteria. Within the known brands, you have certain criteria that you're looking at. Things you'll have sort of experiences. So the known brands, things might not have worked for you. So you'd like, do I want to use this? Do I not want to use this? There will be acceptable brands and there will be unacceptable brands within these categories. There'll be brands that you'd be indifferent about. You don't really care. And then the brands that are overlooked um, within these things. Um, and then within all of these, obviously, brands you've tried before, brands you have not uh, tried before. So when we're looking at the brands, we have to go by these set of criteria. Now, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, that again varies from one person to another person, one type of consumer to another type of consumer. Uh, those brands that have higher degrees of loyalty, obviously, they'll be acceptable more to a larger group of people. Factors that increase the level of pre-purchase search. So it could be product factors. You have a higher level of search when it is a long-lasting or infrequently used product. So something that is long-lasting, that is infrequently used, um, you would have uh, a higher degree of search because if it is long lasting, that means you're not buying it more frequently, right? So, for example, I don't know, a washing machine is something that is relatively long lasting. It's usually, manufacturers say washing machines last for 5 years, right? Um, so that is a product which is longer lasting. A car is something that is longer lasting. House is something should be long lasting. Um, so infrequently used products again. I don't know. Yeah, I've got a steam mop. Okay, so it looks like a vacuum cleaner. For those people who don't know, it's got a little, uh, you know, bottle in it. You fill it up with water. Basically, it works like a steam iron. So if you iron your clothes, um, it creates steam, and basically you can steam your floors with the steam mop. Okay, I've got the device. I purchased it, I don't know, 6 years ago. It's still there, not very frequently used. I don't steam the floors um, on a frequent basis. You can steam carpets also with it. Again, it's not something that is frequently used. Um, so there are a lot of um, products that you'd have, things of that sort. These are usually what we call white goods, which are longer lasting but perhaps infrequently used. Um, then we look at the next bit, which is about uh, if you have a product which has frequent changes in styling, product styling. If things that change frequently, um, then that is going to impact your search. You have higher search because the style is changing. Now, clothing obviously are one of those things. Again, it varies from one person to another person. It varies from one culture to another culture. Um, I believe in Europe, three of the most stylish nations as a whole, on average, um, are the French, the British, and the Italians. Right? These people focus more on their clothing than, say, for example, people in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. Okay, rather less focus on styling. Right? Um, or if we compare Europe to the United States, Europe is much higher than the US in terms of product styling. Uh, if we look at the Asian markets, one of the reasons why local brands in Pakistan have become very, very popular, uh, clothing brands in Pakistan become very popular as opposed to India, which is next door. So India is much bigger in terms of population, 5 times bigger, and yet there are more local Pakistani clothing brands in Pakistan than India, because in Pakistan people are more style conscious, more, and then the style changes very frequently. So the local brands, they change those very frequently. Consequently, Pakistani brands, there are whole lot more of them. Their clothing change very frequently, even though the clothes that are worn in India and Pakistan are relatively the same, the traditional clothes. Um, and that has helped the Pakistani brands then go out and go more global, as opposed to the Indian brands. So you have different cultures, different countries that are. Some of those countries are more style conscious as opposed to other countries. If you purchase something in large volume, then the search is a lot higher. If the price of the product is very high, then obviously the search would be higher. Um, if there are many alternative brands and you're relatively indifferent to most of those brands, then the search is higher. But if there are many alternative brands and you are relatively loyal to one or two brands or one or few brands, then the search becomes lower. So loyalty is the curveball, the googly in this whole thing, which changes our search factor, because the more loyal you are to a particular brand, the lower your search will be. So, despite or in spite of all of these factors that we have listed here, once you bring in loyalty into the equation, then it's something different. So, if you're looking for something that lasts long, perhaps high price, television. But then if you are loyal to, say, Sony or Samsung, what are you going to do? You're going to, even though there's so many other brands out there, you're probably going to focus primarily on those two brands, and your search will be a lot lesser. Uh, there's much variation in the features of the products that they're selling. Okay, so if you have products where there's a lot of variations, then your search will be much higher. Search is higher when the experience is lower, so you don't have much experience in purchasing that particular product or service. So yeah, I think the first iron I purchased was when I was studying um, in uni or colleges, the Americans call it. Um, and I didn't have an iron. I didn't know how to purchase an iron, and it's very funny. I spent a lot of time, even though the iron it costs very little money, um, but I didn't have much experience in purchasing an iron. So I learned a lot about how to, um, purchase an iron. What are the things to look for? What are the brands? What are the features, and so on and so forth. Another thing is when the previous experience was unsatisfactory. You're not happy with the last brand um, that you used, with the last company that you went with. So then you are going to search more. Um, you search more when you're purchasing a gift for someone, right? The product is socially visible when it is in use. Okay. Um, we look at other factors. Your search is higher when the purchase is discretionary. All alternatives have both positive and negative qualities. There's no agreement among users. So some people are saying one product, some people are saying another product. There's conflicting information that is available, and there could be other factors that go within this thing. Uh, the search goes higher when consumers are well educated, have higher income levels, and are younger. Okay, so the younger you are, the more educated you are, higher income, then you're likely to search more. Consumers are low in dogmatism and risk perception. Level of involvement is high. Shopping is seen as an enjoyable activity. So yeah, there's a lot of people who enjoy shopping out there. So a quick question here is how many people enjoy shopping? Okay, so to be frank with you guys, I was not a person who used to enjoy shopping, right? But that's something that changed over time. I think as I got more and more into marketing, um, initially I was going there, and I had a professor. Um, he said that if you want to, um, look at a market, you want to see how well a market is doing, go to the shopping mall, see what people are doing, which brands they're going, what type of things they're buying, and so on and so forth. So I started doing that more of observing people, but then slowly I got more into shopping. I started enjoying this more. So yeah, I like hanging out at malls. I like going out shopping just for the fun of it. Yes, I do enjoy it. And I think perhaps uh, my taste also changed a lot. Um, so I got more into fashion and things of that sort. Um, so that obviously helped change my activities. In the past, my shopping was, say, for example, enjoyable um, for consumer electronics, because that was the thing I was more interested in, right? So oftentimes, if you leave me at a mall, you'd see me end up at an electronics store, because those are the things I enjoy, right? But now I'm looking at more products. So I've got an interesting comment here. All girls enjoy shopping. Yes, that is fairly true. Not all girls, obviously, but in terms of statistics, when we look at stats, we do see women spend more time in a shopping mall or in a store. Um, on average, women will purchase more of a certain type of product than men. Clothes, jewelry, makeup, yes, those type of things. Women do spend more on those type of things. Interestingly, when we look at online shopping, that is also true. This is very interesting. So stats say, research says, um, women spend more on online shopping than men do. Women spend more time uh, on online shopping than men do. This is something very interesting. Um, so the evaluation of alternatives, the types of consumer choices we're looking at, um, the effective choices, um, more holistic and overall evaluation based on how one feels about a purchase, right? So how emotional are you about a particular thing? Okay, sorry, I've got an interesting comment on the online chat here. Someone saying materialistic people do more shopping. No, that is not the case. So materialistic people might be purchasing more of certain type of product. They would go for the most expensive or whatever. That is not the case. There's a lot of brands out there now that cater to um, the low cost, the lower end of the market, right? We cannot say that materialistic people go and fly more, right? It's something that some people enjoy doing versus some people who don't enjoy doing, right? So like I said, um, if someone has a hobby, they're interested in cameras, they're more likely to go to the camera store and spend a lot of time there looking at all the different types of products or services that are there, that the camera store is offering, um, the features of the new cameras, the accessories that are there, right? That's got nothing to do with materialism, right? So yeah, materialism is a small factor, but it's not uh, it does not apply to everyone in there. Um, so if you have emotional connections or something about um, you know a product or set of products or category products, your evaluation of the alternatives will be different, because then you might be focusing more towards a particular brand or particular type of product, um, and so on and so forth. Um, Attribute-based choices have predetermined evaluation criteria. So you know already what are the things you're looking for when you're buying, a particular type of um, product. Something that might require both external and internal search. It could be a complicated decision that you're looking at. Okay, um, can be tangible or intangible products, right? Um, Sorry, I'm just looking at the comments that are coming. I'm trying to answer questions also that people have while we're doing the session. Um, okay. No, it's just between the other participants. So, nature of the evaluation could be tangible or intangible. Um, Tangible factors would be the speed of something, the pixels of something. Intangible factors could be how something makes you feel, right? So a wristwatch, yeah, the wristwatch, right? You can buy one for, I don't know, $25. You can buy one for 25,000 pounds, right? It's a huge difference. They both do the same thing. Perhaps the $25 watch has more features than the 25,000 pound watch, right? But the how does that how does it make you feel? uh, that is the thing, right? Why do people invest in certain things, right? um, so now obviously this is an extreme example, the $25 versus $25,000. You could have watches, right? They're all $25, but certain brands might make you feel in a certain way as opposed to other brands. Why do people go and buy um, you know classical things, right? Price wise it might be the same. If you're buying a classical car versus you buying a new car, the new car would have more features, as opposed to a classical car. but what does the classical car, what does that make you feel? What does that make you think? What uh, non-tangible or intangible factors are attached to that classical car as opposed to the new car? This could include surrogate indicators, attributes that are used as indicators of another attribute. And we are looking at, these attributes are ranked in order of importance. Okay, certain things for certain people are more important as opposed to uh, other things. Uh, for some people, um, the miles per gallon would be more important for a car as opposed to the style or the looks of the car. For other people, it could be the looks, the sportiness of the car. Okay. Um, the consumer decision rules, procedures used by consumers to facilitate brand or other consumption related choices. So, what are the procedures that consumers use to facilitate a brand or consumption related choices? And again, once again, this varies from one person to another person. Um, so these could be compensatory brands evaluated in terms of each relevant criteria, and the best brand or the one with the highest score is chosen. So you're very rational. You're very, very rational with this decision making. So you're looking at, um, here are the criteria I've set. So buying a car, for example, the fuel consumption is one criteria. Uh, the cost of the parts is another criteria. The resale value could be another criteria. And I'm just looking at those criteria. Whichever brand, whichever car gets the highest score, whichever brand gets the highest marks, you then go for that particular brand. So that's it. The non-compensatory ones would be positive evaluations. So um, the positive evaluations do not compensate for negative evaluations. So you're looking at, well, the positives are there, but then the negative evaluations don't really overcome those things, right? So if you have personal evaluation of a product in the past, uh, uh, or somebody close to you, somebody you know, somebody you trust, they've got positive evaluations, they're not going to compensate those negative evaluations. Again, this varies from brand to brand. It varies from person to person. It varies from um, one person's choice over another person's choice. So when we're looking at non-compensatory consumer decision rules, excuse me, um, the conjunctive decision rule is product attributes are identified. You look at a minimal acceptance cutoff point. Okay, so I don't want to go below this point. You're buying a phone, you're looking at the battery power. I don't want to go for a phone that gives me less than, I don't know, 8-10 hours of battery power. So brands that fall below that cutoff point, you do not consider them. They're eliminated from our our decision making. Then we could have a disconjunctive decision rule. Consumers identify product attributes, establish minimal acceptance cutoff point for each attribute, and accept the brand that meets or exceeds each or any one of the cutoff points. So you have certain set of cutoff points. Any brand that meets any one of those attributes, the cutoff points, they're included in our list of products to evaluate. Um, Moving on, the product attributes are identified. This is the lexicographic decision rule. Product attributes are identified. Um, they're ranked in terms of importance. Brands are compared in terms of the attribute considered most important. So obviously, you'll have certain attributes that'll be more important than others. Um, and then the brands with the highest scores on the first attribute is chosen. If there's a tie, you move on to the next attribute. Again, oftentimes consumers do this in their head. These are not things that normally people sit down. Um, they're not, people sit down and think about in detail. The decision making process uh, would be more formalized when, as we said earlier, if the product you're purchasing is something that's longer lasting, that's purchased infrequently, higher in price, uh, so on and so forth. So just give you a hypothetical, rating. So if you're looking at three products here in this table, they've done three products: the Dell laptop, compact laptop, Toshiba laptop. Okay, does Compaq still make laptops? I'm not really sure, but okay. Um, so what are the features we're looking at? For somebody, weight could be a feature, the dimensions, the processor speed, the display, the RAM, hard drive, battery life, other features, and the price. And what we're doing is we are ranking each of these products on a particular score. So in this case, the Toshiba comes up with the highest total score. Um, in second, third place are the Dell and the Compaq laptops. So you would go for um, the Toshiba laptop because it gets a higher score. Now, when we're looking at alternatives that we are considering, a lifestyle is a important factor. What sort of a lifestyle do you have? Um, we've discussed this earlier in the sessions. Um, Consumer lifestyle is an important factor. Different people have different sort of lifestyles, and for example, just as a refresher, some people have more active lifestyles. Um, that means they're more into sports and things of that sort. So then those people who are into sports, that is going to impact the evaluation of criteria. So uh, when you're thinking of going to work and you're thinking, okay, what's the best way to get there? Um, well, you could drive, you could bike, you could take the train, you could take the bus, or you could take a Uber, right? You've got different options. Um, you could walk if you're not too far away from work. Then, as someone who has an active lifestyle, would consider, you know, um, biking and walking. They would give them higher importance when they're selecting these. If you have incomplete information, okay, then it becomes very difficult when you're selecting alternatives. Non-comparable alternatives, right? So um, if you cannot compare the different alternatives that are presented. Um, I was looking at cars, right? So some cars, when they look at the power of the car, they talk about horsepower. Other cars, I saw a brochure, they were looking at the CC of the engine, right? So horsepower versus CC is hard to judge because these are two different metrics. How do you evaluate if that is the only two bits of information you have about these? Um, if you have to make a series of decisions, it's not just one product, other products or service you have to buy as the result of this thing. And the consumption vision. So the mental picture that you have in your mind of the consequences of using a particular product. So if you're more, focused about the environment, for example, that mental picture. Well, if I'm purchasing this product, how is that going to affect the environment? That you create a mental picture in your mind about a particular product, and then the alternatives that you're choosing. Um, how do consumers cope with missing information? Some people will delay the decision until the information is received. Some people will just ignore the information and use the information that is available. Some people will change the decision strategy to one that better accommodates for the missing information, right? Um, and then some people will just infer the missing information. Well, I think this is what is happening here. Um, and finally, the information search and the marketing strategy. How do these two link with each other? What we want to do as marketers is to get products into customers' evoked set. So we want to get our product into their set of brands that are acceptable to everyone. We want to limit information search if your brand is the preferred brand, right? We want to make sure the customer just focuses on our brand and not about other brands. We want to increase information search if your alternative is not the preferred brand. So we want the customer to start thinking about other alternatives, right? Again, how do we do that? Is through communications. Both of these, all of these points, we do that through primarily through communication, through advertising, through messages on social media, on television, and so on and so forth. And we use point of purchase advertising effectively. Right? Point of purchase advertising. We've talked about this earlier, but just a brief overview. Um, um, revision of this is, grocery stores do this very, very effectively. You're in the grocery store, you're walking around, and you see point of purchasing advertising. Part of that is even the placement of the product. Okay, where the product is placed, what shelf, where in the store, where on the in terms of the height, where it's placed, how close is it to the checkout counter or the till. All of these factors are important in terms of point of purchasing advertising. And finally, the alternative evaluations is how does that impact the marketing strategy? We want to identify the decision rule used by target market and use suitable promotional messages. So, how is the target market um, going to decide? What are the factors they're going to look at? And then we use promotional strategies accordingly. We influence the choice of evaluation criteria. We influence the rating of your product on the evaluation criteria. Uh, we use surrogate indicators effectively, and we use the consumption vision of a customer, right? All of these factors we use, and more. These are just some of them. Um, uh, to bring into our marketing strategy. So once we know how our customers think, how our customers behave, how our customers act, um, how are they making that the decision making criteria, then we can make a better marketing strategy to effectively target our customers and to have an impact on their decision making criteria. So once again, we're doing these lectures, but it is really, really important that you guys are reading um, up on these topics. Any book will do on consumer behavior. You could get the one that we are using the slides of, but really any book on consumer behavior would be useful. Um, it's really important that you guys read these chapters in conjunction with listening to the lectures. And that's the end of the lecture for today. So what we'll do is we'll move on to our um, Zoom session. And I think the Zoom session is almost ready to go. I will paste the link here for everyone. Um, okay. Going to, how do I share? There's a link for everyone to follow. It's up, and now I'm on Zoom waiting for you guys to join in.